Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 9th of July 2025. I'm Councillor Ian Massey and I'm the convener of this committee. I now introduce you to the top table. My far left is Councillor Grant Stewart, my vice convener, Miss Audrey Brown, Democratic Support Officer, and Mr Colin Elliott, Solicitor. And on my right is Mr Christian Smith, Development Management and Building Standards Service Manager, and Mr Sean Panton, Team Leader, Major Applications and Enforcement. As this is a hybrid meeting, members joining virtually are reminded that if you leave the meeting during consideration of any application, you are unable to participate or vote on that item when you return to the meeting. This also means that if a member loses their internet connection during consideration of any item, they should not vote on that item. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you are leaving the meeting, or if you have lost your connection and are therefore unable to vote on the item. And whilst we are operating as a hybrid meeting today, can I remind councillors and officers to use the chat box to attract my attention, which all members should have access to. Q for question, C for comment. I now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and the attendance of those in the chambers and online. Thank you.
Morning, convener. Thank you. We have apologies this morning from Councillor Waters with Councillor McPherson substituting. We have all councillors in the chambers apart from Councillor James, who will ask to confirm he's online.
Morning, Audrey. Yes, I'm here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest? No declarations of interest. Thank you. Item 3, the minutes. Can we agree the minutes of the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 11th of June 2025? Apologies, the revised minutes. Okay, item 4, deputations. Can I ask the committee if they agree to hear deputations on item 521, 532 and 533? Thank you. And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the deputations and members of the public watching today. Your request to speak has been granted. You will be called to the lectern as we reach the relevant item on the agenda and be invited to make your deputation by the vice convener, followed by a period of time for questions from members. It is requested that the content of your deputation is kept relevant to the planning consideration in relation to the item of business being discussed. Please also ensure that when answering questions, your response remains relevant and direct to the question asked. Item 5, application for determination. This is a section 36 consultation, and it's for the installation of a 64.9 megawatt battery energy storage system and associated infrastructure, land 60 metres north of Abernethy Cemetery, Newborough Road, Abernethy. To introduce the report is Mr Panton.
Thank you, convener, and good morning, councillors. So as stated, the first application on the agenda today is for the installation of a battery storage facility near Abernethy. I would remind members that the Scottish Government's Energy Consents Unit, otherwise known as the ECU, are the determining authority here rather than Perth and Kinross Council. PKC are a consultee only, and we are recommending today that we respond to the ECU with no objection to the proposed development subject to conditions. Members should note that if PKC object to the application, then this will likely trigger a public inquiry. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. So here we can see the location of the site, which is wedged between the A913 and Jamesfield Garden Centre to the east of Abernethy. The yellow star denotes the location of the substation to which this proposal will connect into. Next slide, please. Members should note that the site already benefits from planning permission for a 49.9 megawatt facility on a largely similar footprint. The plan on the screen shows what is already approved and could be implemented. Next slide, please. We now move on to what is currently proposed as part of this current application. As can be seen, it is largely similar to what has already been approved. The main change is that the output has now increased from 49.9 megawatts to 64.9 megawatts. The blue shaded area shows the part of the site which will implement the previous permission, and the beige area shows the area which will form part of this current application. Next slide, please. We now see the proposed site plan in greater detail, showing the general arrangement proposed. Again, this layout is similar to that already granted. Next slide, please. We now have a typical elevation for the units proposed. As can be seen, these appear largely similar to a standard storage container. Next slide, please. This plan now shows the elevations of one of the buildings proposed. As can be seen, a sedum roof is incorporated into the design. I'll now take members through a series of photographs taken on my recent site visit. Next slide, please. This first photograph shows the site when viewed from the A913. The access road you can see just to the left of the image is the existing access road that leads to Jamesfield Garden Centre, as well as some other properties. Next slide, please. This next image again shows the site when viewed from the A913. The substation is located beyond the trees you can see to the left of the image. Next slide, please. This penultimate photograph shows the site when viewed from the car park at Jamesfield, looking back towards the A913. Next slide, please. This final photograph shows the substation to which this facility will connect into. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference. Before I do, I would remind members of the update that was circulated with a slight revision to condition 19, archaeology, and some of the numbering for informatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Panton. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? Councillor James.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks for the presentation, Sean. I'm aware I was on the committee that granted permission on this the last time. Just concerned that it's growing, and will that affect or the visual effect on the garden centre and the noise? Are we anticipating a greater noise output from this site now, please?
Thanks, Councillor James. So I'll answer the part about visual and then I'll pass on to my colleague Lynn Reid about the noise. So in terms of visual, this actually looks broadly similar to what's already been approved. It's really just due to the advancements in technology and stuff since applications come in that each unit can now produce more output. So really it looks broadly the same. The changes proposed are relatively minor. So in terms of visual, we're content that it's not going to be of detriment to the surrounding area. But like I say, I'll pass on to my colleague Lynn Reid just to confirm the noise situation.
Lynn. Okay, we'll go on to the next. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, my mic wasn't opening. I was clicking away there and it wouldn't let me type a message or anything. Councillor James, yes, with regards to the noise effect, a noise impact assessment was undertaken and it did look at the BESS at Jamesfield, and it did look at the Abernethy 2 BESS. And so the cumulative effect was taken into account and there was no change. It was still going to meet the NR curve 20. So we had no objections on the grounds of noise. There is also conditions set to ensure that amenity is protected through those conditions.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you. Councillor Braun, I see you've got two questions. Are they related?
No, it's all right, Convener, because Councillor James has asked one. It was just to clarify the land situation on the site. So there's only one left, and it really does come down to a question of fire risk on these things. I know we're constantly told they're improving their technology, but there are still fires on these batteries. My question is really: is this a matter for us, or should we leave it for the ECU to clarify that sort of thing? And should we actually mention something here that we're concerned, or we just leave it for them to worry about that situation?
Yeah, I think we've discussed this a number of times on similar projects, and at this point in time, the health and safety issues are not a matter for planning consideration. My understanding is that central government, both UK national and subsequently in Scotland, are looking at that issue and what actions can be taken to perhaps get some information in relation to that. But at this point in time, no health and safety matters are dealt with under other legislation.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. It's just a question in relation to the original slide that was up with the boundary. The boundary in the original slide had a blue section. Does that mean it's part of this same boundary? And are we therefore looking at a further application down the road?
Thanks, Councillor Allen. So when we get a planning application in, we usually ask for 2 lines on the plan, the red line being the red line of the application site boundary, but we also ask for a blue line which shows the land ownership under the applicant's control. So the blue line you saw is within the applicant's control. So we can't confirm whether they're going to submit future applications, but they do own that land, so they may be will in the future. But the blue line is just to show their land ownership.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you. I'm the local ward member on this committee for this ward, and I'm concerned about the cumulative impact of a large number of these applications hitting this area. Do you share that concern?
Thanks, Councillor Illingworth. Yes, we share that concern, and it is a planning consideration. So when we're assessing these applications going forward and ones we've already assessed, we do take the cumulative impact into account. So it is a concern of us. We don't want to see too many concentrated in one area, but it is something we're looking at.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Therefore, I'll put forward a motion myself, and the motion is to grant the application. Can I have a seconder? Vice Convener Stewart.
Thank you, convener. I'll give way to Councillor Allen.
Okay, Councillor Allen.
I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's any amendment? Bailey Williamson.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask to approve the paper, but ask that the condition 16 be amended to include the request that wildflower seed mix is sourced from Scotland, i.e. Scottish native seed is used, and secondly, to have the use of ash removed from the condition because of ash dieback and replaced with a suitable alternative.
Bailey McLaren. Got a point of clarity.
Convener, thank you. This is going to the, am I correct? This application is going to the Energy Consent Unit. So therefore we're not approving anything, are we? We are passing comments.
Yes, we are basically confirming today whether we're going back with an objection or not. So if the paper is agreed today, you're confirming that we're going back to the ECU with no objection from Perth and Kinross Council. So we're not approving or refusing anything. We're simply saying whether we have an objection or no objection. But we are saying we've got no objection subject to these conditions. Does that make sense?
Members, if I could perhaps encapsulate, I think, where you are at the moment, you've got a kind of motion to approve according to revised conditions and informatives per the paper plus the updates. I think what Bailey Williamson is suggesting is condition 16. I actually don't think the recommended condition 16 to the ECU is looking for a detailed landscaping and planting scheme. I think what you're doing is you're not amending that. You're asking for a note to be added that it be Scottish wildflower seed and no ash. So because it still would need that detailed landscaping plan in the future. So you're not actually asking for a change, you're asking more for a note for those two purposes. And if I'm looking to Convener and Councillor Allen, if you're content to accept that, that would just be a note appended to things. I'm looking at Sean as well, if that would be acceptable.
That would be competent from our point of view, so we could send the paper to the ECU saying here's Perth and Kinross Council's position, but here's a note for condition 16. We could do that and it would be competent.
I'm happy with that.
And I am too. Thank you.
You okay with that, Councillor?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further amendment or no, nothing else? Okay, then it's the application agreed in line with the revised recommendations to respond to the ECU with no objection. Thank you. Let's move swiftly on and move on to major application, which is the formation of a 22 megavolt solar farm comprising ground-mounted solar array, inverters, substation, ancillary buildings, fencing, CCTV cameras, access tracks and associated works at land 320 metres northwest of PT Farm, Kinockley, Kilfarangus and Blairgowrie. And to introduce the report is Mr. Panton.
Oh,
There we are. Right, thank you, convener. So the next application on the agenda today is for a 22 megawatt solar farm near Campmuir, Kilfarangus, for which we are recommending approval. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. So here we can see the location of the site, which is approximately 45.75 hectares and is located some 540 metres southeast of the settlement of Campmuir. The site is bound to the west by the Kinockley Burn, to the east by an unclassified road, to the north by Tookins Wood and the C405, and to the south by more agricultural fields. The site is currently in an arable use, with some constituting prime agricultural land, as per paragraph 3 of the reports before you. Next slide, please. We now have a proposed site plan. As can be seen, the site is to be divided into 5 key areas, with 2 access points being taken. Members should note that the intended lifespan of the facility is approximately 40 years. The land beneath and around the panels will remain largely undeveloped, with additional native grassland planting and landscaping designed to promote connected habitats. It is intended that the site will be reinstated at the end of its operational life. Next slide, please. We now have a typical elevation plan for the panels. The lower edge of the panels will be set approximately 0.9 metres above the ground, with the higher edge being approximately 1.6 metres. The maximum height in total will be approximately 3.36 metres. Next slide, please. This plan now shows the elevations of the customer substation metering room. This building measures approximately 5 metres at maximum width and 7 metres at maximum length and will appear as a small agricultural building. Next slide, please. We now see the proposed elevations for the site office and communications building. As can be seen, this appears as a small portable cabin. Next slide, please. This plan now shows the proposed landscaping. As can be seen, some buffers are to be created to help minimise the visual impact of the proposed development and to improve biodiversity. I will now take members through a series of recent photographs taken on my site visit only last week. This first photograph shows the approximate location of identified area number 1. The yellow arrow denotes the location of the closest residential receptor to this part of the site. Next image, please. This next photograph shows the central section of the site when looking west from the eastern boundary at the unclassified road. Next image, please. Here you can see the unclassified road referred to, with the development site covering almost the entirety of the fields you can see to the right. Next image, please. This next photograph again shows the unclassified road, this time looking north, meaning that the development site is the fields to the left of the image. Final image, please. This final photograph shows the site when looking south when viewed from the C405. This is the approximate location of the identified area number 4. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference. Before I do, I would remind members that of the circulated update, which makes a change to the content of paragraph 81. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Panton. We do have the deputations in this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures.
Thank you, convener. Can I call on Mr. Ritchie, Kettins Parish Community Council? Mr. Ritchie's and the Kettins Parish Council are objectors to the application. Good morning, Mr. Ritchie. You've got 5 minutes for your deputation. Whenever you're ready to start, I'll start the clock.
You can see I'm new to this. The green light, right? Try again. That's 4 of my minutes up. Right, good morning, Mr. Chairman, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Ritchie, and I live in the area of Campmuir. I have done for several years. Whilst the residents of Campmuir and 7 rural houses have not formed a group as such to oppose the development, we've spoken to quite a few in the Campmuir area locally who have asked me to represent their views at this meeting today. And while we all recognise the requirements to produce green energy, apparently unstoppable use of prime agricultural land is a real concern, particularly in the light of the recent political and economical uncertainties. And when arguments for our food security are stronger than ever, there's only 8% of Scotland's prime agricultural land, so there must be plenty more room other than agricultural land to put these solar farms on. Bear with me. Yeah, so we've got brownfield sites, you've got rooftops, although that's a smaller concern, and plenty of unproductive hillside. And to be clear, it's only about 1% of this development that's not prime agricultural land. So as this community will be aware, there's a gathering pace of solar development all on prime agricultural land. As these clusters light moths to a flame around Cooperangus, the substation immediately at Cooperangus, and one development has already been approved by ministers awaiting a decision. One was refused earlier this month, which will no doubt be appealed in this application, and 2 others are lining up. And of particular concern, the residents of this application is the prospects of being sandwiched in between 2 separate developments, one which is at Market Hill, 250 acres, which is awaiting decision from Scottish ministers, and then this one here at Peaty, which is 110 acres, with the Campmuir and other houses being hemmed in between the 2 of them. So before long, we'll no longer be living in the countryside, but on a solar farm. These concerns are shared widely, evidently, in both the Kettins Parish as well as Burlington and District Community Councils, submitting letters of objection on behalf of their communities. And aside from the unnecessary use of prime agricultural land, this development proposes to use a wide open stretch of countryside which slopes upwards, ensuring that any screening measures will take many years to become remotely effective. And the report reads that it suggests that one screen area is Tookins Wood. Now, while that's been cut down just recently, it will be getting replanted, but it's going to take several years before that's fully established. The net result is that this development, if approved, will be a major eyesore to local residents for the use of Burlton to Abernight Road. So we would urge Perth and Kinross Council to pause on all solar developments approvals until robust, location-sensitive and proportionate planning framework is in place. And without a comprehensive planning criteria, the assets' cumulative impact proportionately and site suitability and a long-term sustainability, we risk permanent landscape change and food insecurity. And that's my objections.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Are you willing to take questions from members? If members could populate the chat box. Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thanks, Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Ritchie, just to clarify a statement you made at the end there, the woods at the north end of the site has been cut down recently. Is that correct? Yeah. So it's the pictures on Google Maps aren't really correct anymore. So that woodland on. Yep.
Yeah, they were cut down recently. They are getting replanted. There was a couple of different woods, but the one that we're mentioning there has taken away a lot of the shading of the proposed site. So yeah, it's going to be a few years before that's fully established again. And I think it's a hardwood plantation that's going in rather than softwoods. So it will take a bit longer to get established.
Convener Massey.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Ritchie, for your presentation. You talked about food security. I'd be interested to know, do you know what type of crops are planted on those fields?
Yeah, there's a variety of crops, as you've seen in the picture that you had up there earlier on. There's potatoes growing on one of the sites. We've got barley, carrots, which is just some of the crops that grow in that area. I mean, there's the usual sort of turnips get grown, not necessarily at this moment in time, but barley, potatoes would be some of the main crops that's grown in this arable ground.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Councillor Convener Message just answered part of the question, but in a different way. So you answered the field itself. Obviously, it uses crops. Is it continually in use? Is what I was coming to as a prime land.
Yes, there's crops in there every year.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Vice Convener, but I'm just typing in that Convener Massey got there first.
Mr. Ritchie, there appears to be no further questions. You're free to go. Good morning, Ms. Jones. Are you there?
I am here, yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear. Can I just point out to people here in the chamber and online that you're objecting to this application?
Yes, that's right. Do you want me just to go ahead?
Yes, are you aware that you've got 5 minutes?
Yep, I am. Yep.
And
So, go
on
ahead.
you go. Yep, on you go.
So my name is Polly Jones and I live in one of the small group of houses immediately adjacent to the site in this proposed development. So thank you for letting me speak today. My concern, I believe, is shared by all of my neighbours and many of the residents of Campmere. I've spoken to multiple people who asked me to come today because other people weren't available. So we were actually really shocked to hear that this was being considered for approval, given the size of it and the impact it's going to have on all of us. Currently, we look out at a wide, open expanse of beautiful agricultural land. We bought our properties due to their location at a price that reflected that setting. and we pay our council tax to reflect that value and setting. And if this proposal is allowed, I and my neighbours will be faced directly with a minimum 6-metre wall with solar panels. And I missed the presentation, unfortunately, because we've got a electricity outlet of the day and I couldn't watch it. But if you visited the site in person prior to the meeting, you will have seen the upward slope that was mentioned by the previous speaker. So the actual height of the site is a lot higher than the panels on the land, and our houses look directly onto that slope. So we're very sceptical that the screening will have the effect described in the proposal. And even once the screening is fully grown, we're still going to be dwarfed by the panels that are visible higher up the hill. Previous objections have mentioned cumulative loss of prime agricultural land as developments like these crowd in around the substations, and as mentioned, that is a risk in Cooper Angus. There's multiple developments proposed, and if they go ahead, we won't be living in the countryside anymore. We'll be living on an industrial site. And I feel that in Scotland, we don't have to have the trade-off between food and energy, because we have a lot of land that is not prime agricultural land. If generating assets are sited on brownfield sites or on rooftops or land of lower agricultural quality, we can have power and food. The report in front of you says that Policy 5 of the National Planning Framework 4 allows solar panels on prime agricultural land, where their secure provision for restoration and layout and design minimises the amount of protected land that is required. And whilst that's correct, the policy is specifically in relation to the protection of soils and doesn't relate to the wider principle of the use of prime agricultural land in the first place, which our local area plan specifically rules out. So we're not convinced that the proposal is in line with policy intent, and would ask you to consider this aspect in detail before reaching your decision. Yes, a previous person had mentioned that the risk of the village of Campmere being surrounded by 2 enormous swathes of industrial solar sites, and it doesn't seem fair, reasonable, proportionate, or strategically justifiable, and we would ask that the committee vote to stop such a dramatic and fundamental change being imposed on the community without their consent. Henceforth, I would urge you to refuse this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms Jones. Are you willing to take questions from members?
Yes, I will do my best.
Okay, thank you. We'll give the chat function a moment to populate. Bear with us. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thanks, Ms Jones, for your statements. Just to clarify, where your house is in the kind of northwest of the site, the kind of small collection of houses at that near that road junction, is that correct?
Borland Mill, that's where I am. So it's halfway along, directly looking over the site.
Okay, thanks. I see where you are. Thanks.
Mm.
Ms Jones, there's no further questions. You're free to go.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Could I now call on Mr Jenkins, representing the applicant, and Mrs Russell, planning agent. Good morning. You're aware that you've got 5 minutes each. So whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at committee this morning. My name is Lisa Russell. I'm the Planning Director at Stevenson Halliday, and we've been acting as the agent for the application, and I'm joined today by Mr James Jenkins, who's representative of Green Tech, the applicant. In the audience as well today are the landowners of the site. I hope that my presentation today, alongside that of the case officers, makes clear the detailed consideration of each aspect of the proposed development, and how matters raised by both consultees and addressing as best as possible the representations made by local residents has led to the result that the proposed development's compliance with the development plan. The proposed development crucially delivers renewable energy and addresses both the climate and nature crisis. The developable area of the solar farm will cover only 23.83 hectares of the site, and we'll discuss a little bit later just about the design iteration process of how that also includes significant biodiversity and landscaping plan to address a lot of the concerns raised by the members of the public. The proposed development will also be supported by active habitat management. There's quite a number of benefits from this proposed development. The first is naturally it's renewable energy generation. It will have an installed capacity of 22 megawatts of AC, which accords with the grid connection capacity. But a key element of the proposed development is the substantial biodiversity enhancements that will be created on the site. And that goes straight to the call from MPF4, which looks to address not only the climate crisis, but the nature crisis. The proposed development will result in a substantial biodiversity enhancement, and it's not only resulting in a positive net gain, but indeed increases it by 207.97% from its current baseline. And those enhancements include native broadland, woodland and thicket planting, individual tree planting, native hedgerow, mixed hedgerow and trees, enhancement of the existing hedgerows that are on site, inclusion of species-rich grassland, enhancement of the drainage ditches through the seeding of wet meadow mix along the edges, and additional enhancement measures to be incorporated across the site, which includes the provision of bat, barn oil, bird and habitat boxes, as well as the opportunity for beekeeping and public access by setting back the boundaries of the site from the solar panels. There's also socioeconomic benefits, which Mr. Jenkins will through at the moment, if you want to talk about
that. GreenTech is a member of the Perthshire Chamber of Commerce, and we are committed to working with the local supply chain to support the construction and maintenance of the development. We estimate the project will deliver over £4.5 million of construction work that could be delivered by local contractors and specialists, in addition to work awarded by SSE for the cable connection. Perthshire is also central to solar farms we are developing in neighbouring areas, and new GreenTech engineers for operations and maintenance would also therefore be based locally, in addition to our head of asset management and head of operations. The solar farm would also generate good levels of business rates without creating any burden on council infrastructure. And importantly, the rent payment to the landowner would ensure that they can continue investing in their farm enterprise and maintain it as a viable operation, that they're currently experiencing challenges at the moment for personal reasons. GreenTech is also committed to a community benefit fund for the local area. A typical community benefit would normally take the form of a community benefit fund of £500 per megawatt. Back to you.
Thank you. Public consultation was undertaken from the outset, and prior to formal public consultation, the applicant put out an offer to meet with local residents, and subsequently 2 in-person meetings were undertaken. This followed adverts, posters and a 2.5 kilometre radius leaflet drop. A total of 27 local residents attended the first public exhibition event, and feedback forms were made available, and they were very carefully considered in subsequent design iterations. A total of 22 local residents attended the second public exhibition event, and again, feedback forms were carefully reviewed. Throughout, the applicant has sought to meet and discuss the proposals with residents, and significant amendments have been made through the iteration process, which is demonstrated in the supporting design and access statement submitted with the planning application. GreenTech's approach has been to address the issues raised by local residents, to front-load the design by ensuring that site constraints were understood and addressed as early in the process as possible, so that a well-designed layout could be brought forward at each stage of the exhibitions and ultimately into the application. Amendments to the design were made following surveys from technical experts and through consultation. In response to the concerns raised at the public exhibition on visual impact, panels were removed from the southwestern and southeastern corners to soften visual impacts on nearby properties and those using local roads and core paths. Panels were also subsequently removed from the northwest corner to protect long-range views from the properties located to the west. These changes were all guided by expert advice from the landscape architects. Inverters and transformer stations were located outside areas of greatest risk of flooding, away from residential properties and the most elevated parts of the site. Careful consideration was also given to the substation compound, which is in an area of the site which is less visually prominent and where long-range views are restricted by existing screening. The layout has also included generous setbacks of the perimeter fence of the solar arrays, away from the site boundaries, allowing grassland meadows between the perimeter fence and the boundary hedgerows, as well as protecting boundary vegetation and promoting wildlife travelling along these routes, along the enhanced and extended hedgerows. This space also allows access for landscape maintenance and provides opportunities for specific activities such as beekeeping and potentially an alternative route for pedestrians and horse riders that can avoid the use of roads, and was in direct response to comments made within the public exhibition. Setbacks to the Connaughtree and Tuggins Woods were also incorporated. In terms of policy, the NPF4 now forms part of the development plan, and the global climate emergency and nature crisis have formed the foundations for the national spatial strategy as a whole, with page 7 outlining that Scotland's future place will be a net zero, nature positive place that is designed to reduce emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change whilst protecting, recovering and restoring our environment. Every decision on our future development must contribute to making Scotland a more sustainable place, and we will encourage expansion of renewable energy generation. Policy 11 is the lead policy and supports all forms of renewable development, including solar. The planning statement submitted confirms how the proposed development complies with the key considerations of Policy 11 and all the criteria set out in E. But the policy is also clear that in considering any effects of the proposed development, that significant weight is also to be placed on the contribution to the renewable energy generation and greenhouse gas reduction targets. The application also gains weight from how it addresses the nature crisis through the biodiversity measures and detailed landscaping plans proposed. Full assessment against all remaining relevant NPF4 and the local development plan policies are contained in the planning statement and accord with the committee report, which confirms compliance. The PT site is 45.75 hectares, but the solar array area will cover only 23.83 hectares of this, which represents 0.038% of Scotland's prime agricultural land, or 0.04 of the Perth and Kinross Council's prime agricultural land. As noted previously, the generation from renewable energy sources or extraction of minerals is an exemption to the current Policy 5. The construction of the proposed development will be undertaken with minimal impact to soils. The solar panels are mounted on metal frames, which are driven into the ground, leaving the topsoil under and around the panels intact. It will not be including more traditional foundations. Policy 5 recognises that there is competing demands for important land uses and is still supportive of renewable energy, as it understands that that is an exemption to the prime agricultural land where appropriate design mitigation has been incorporated. Agricultural use can continue in the form of sheep grazing during the operational period, and as Mr Jenkinson has already alluded, it is important to help the continued use of the existing holding that is there. In summary, the proposed development will generate energy and is classed as essential infrastructure, and Policy 5 provides that exemption. Perth and Kinross Council requested some further information following the submission on matters of ecology, transport and heritage. All of those matters have been fully satisfied and there are no outstanding objections from internal council consultees. The proposed development is being brought forward in an environment where the need for renewable energy is critical to reach the greenhouse gas emission reduction targets set by law and the renewable energy targets set by the Scottish Government and Perth and Kinross Council. The Council's Local Area Energy Plan 2024-29 recognises that a marked shift is needed. That's fine. That a marked shift is needed towards locally sourced renewable energy to decarbonise the energy supply. The importance of energy security and affordability has also been heightened in recent years. Both myself and the applicant are available today if there are any questions. Thank you for listening.
Mrs Russell, Mr Jenkins, there are questions. Can I start with Bailey McLaren?
Thank you. Could you give us a bit more information around your statement about the current farming enterprise, and specifically, is there currently livestock within that farming enterprise? Because you've mentioned sheep. And, you know, I've been doing some calculations here about this agricultural loss of food production. So it'd be really good to get a broader understanding of where this business, this agricultural business is within the food production chain. Thank you.
Yes, there's been a bereavement in the family, which was the the person who was mainly involved in agriculture with this farm enterprise. So they're obviously struggling in that respect. They do keep horses as well on some of the fields, some fields. But the overall, I mean, that's the main reason why they're struggling. They're having to cope with that issue.
So they're not actually farming the land themselves?
At the moment, they're having to rent it out, yes.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just curious about the community benefit. I think you mentioned £500 per megawatt. We recently got a briefing on the contributions from wind farms, which is says the good practice guidelines recommend £5,000 per megawatt index linked. So I'm just wondering why it would be 500 compared to 5,000 for a wind farm.
Yes, wind farms have a different financial dynamic, and they can actually afford that higher level. We are part of the Solar Energy Scotland Trade Association, and they are in discussions with the Scottish Government about an appropriate level of community benefit with solar farms. Like in the rest of the UK, it's not a formal requirement for community contributions, but we find that the £500 is achievable. We've known some discussions, some other developers in the solar industry who think it should be less, but we find that 500 is a good amount that we should be contributing. And we did make deputations. Well, the Trade Association made deputations to the government about the economic dynamics of solar farms and the amount of contributions that they should be making, because I think there's a consultation paper out on the matter. And the contribution we're making is that we offer, I believe, is slightly above what you find in the industry.
Yeah, I understand that the guidance has been looked at by the Scottish Government. I'm just wondering, should they come up with a bigger figure, a higher figure, would you adjust that to reflect the guidance when it comes in?
Sorry, can I interrupt? Could we possibly reframe this about policies rather than having a discussion about how much money communities are going to get? So could I maybe come back to Councillor Cuthbert if you want to reframe that? Thank you.
No, it's okay.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you to you both for your deputation there. I was just a wee bit surprised about the claim of biodiversity enhancement, where you're replacing agricultural land with solar panels, etc. Can you maybe just go over that again for me, please, so as I'm clearer? Thank you.
Yes, so we've employed expert ecologists and obviously a landscape architect to help us with our plans, and they do calculations based on a formula that's being devised by the UK government, and I think it's gradually being looked at in Scotland as well. So when they come up with the figure of 207.97, that's based on what's a baseline. So they do the ecology surveys of what's there at the moment. and then they assess what's being proposed and what the increase is going to be based on what's there at the moment. Arable land is not particularly good in terms of biodiversity, which is why you get good biodiversity gains from this in terms of bird life. The Royal Society for the Protection of Birds has been doing surveys of operational solar farms as compared to farmland nearby, and they're finding that the solar farms get a greater variety of bird species and a greater number as well. So it does genuinely deliver those benefits. And specifically in this case, you're looking at an additional 2.6 kilometres of new species-rich hedgerow, as well as the enhancement and restoration of an additional 430 metres of existing hedgerow. So what's happening is we're connecting all what's there up with another network to create a network of hedgerows around the site to enhance the biodiversity. And in addition to that, we're adding a strip of wetland meadow alongside the ditch to create more enhanced wetland habitat for those types of amphibians and mammals that like to use waterways.
Councillor Brown will take your first question.
Thanks for asking, Marina. Thank you for your deputation. The 23 hectares of land, that won't be growing any food on it, will it?
Sorry, can you repeat that, sir?
The 23 hectares of land which the solar panels will take up will no longer be growing any food. Is that correct?
There won't be crops there. It'll be mostly meadow, so it'll be good for insects which attract other wildlife like birds.
As we've heard, it grows crops, potatoes, carrots. I don't think people eat insects in this country. So we're going to lose crops is what comes down to.
Councillor Braun, you need to kind of phrase a question within policy. I'm going to have to say that policy allows for renewable energy on prime agricultural land, and that's something you have to take into account. So you're talking slightly different concepts here between biodiversity and the loss of prime agricultural land.
Councillor James.
Thanks, Vice Convener, and thanks for your presentation. I guess my questions really have been asked. However, for me, clarity is the thing. You said the landowner was deceased. My understanding that was 15 years ago. So what we're talking about is the land being rented out. So we're looking at perhaps putting other businesses at risk. Am I correct in thinking that? Thank you.
I can't answer that question specifically, but I can't. There's nothing to indicate that put other businesses at risk.
I think, again, Councillor James, it isn't directly a relevant consideration. You're not looking at the farming operation. What you're looking at is the proposal. So you're not making an assessment on whoever the owner is and what their circumstances are. You're looking at the proposal for a solar farm, and I'm kind of so we're not looking at the back, not looking into the background circumstances.
My question, Mr. Elliott, was because it's 59 acres. We'll use the figure 59 acres, not 28 hectares. But that's prime agricultural land that is being farmed. We're going to give that up, which is growing crops as it is right now, and it will affect somebody's doing that. If they're saying that the owner is deceased, somebody is using that land, and we're putting their business at risk. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, Councillor James, I don't want to get into too much of a debate. That's not my role. But what I'm pointing out is the policy in NPF4 is not the same as your LDP policy. Your LDP policy was, how shall we say, a bit stricter when it came to the loss of prime agricultural land. And there was perhaps, you could argue, less likely that would happen. but you have a very different situation under MPF4, and it's a policy you're obliged to take into account, where it specifically allows prime agricultural land to renewable energy on prime agricultural land. So what you're looking at is looking against the policy context and working out whether it breaches policy or not. And if it does breach policy, is that significant, and are there other material considerations? Of course, the report recommends approval, but I don't want to get in a debate. I'm simply indicating that we're looking at the application within a policy context.
Councillor Braun, your second question.
Yes, I just want to pick up on the question of flooding. You did mention it very briefly. We've had a note come through that SEPA now class the site as a risk for flooding, and I just wonder what your thoughts are on that. There was no mention, apart from the fact you mentioned it floods, that there is an issue here.
I think the case officer report was just clarifying an error, a typographical error, so that the SEPA haven't changed their consultation response. I would point out, however, that your local flood risk engineer, the Perth and Kinross flood risk engineer, has assessed the proposal and what's against what SEPA's worked for, and they have raised no objection to the proposal, and it's been designed to ensure it complies with the requirements.
Councillor Allen, your second question.
Thank you, Vice Convener. It's a question mainly to Mr Jenkins. When you made your deputation earlier on, you spoke about local employment in the area. Just given that the scope of the project and green tech implementation, can you tell me a wee bit more about local employment, please?
Yes, so there's several aspects to a solar farm installation. There's the actual supply of the product, but it's the actual installation itself, that installing the solar farm, that's providing the employment. You have to do civils works like the fencing. The landscaping investment will be quite substantial. That will go to a local landscape contractor. The actual installation will be by local companies that do civils, for example. I mean, you'll note in Perth, for example, you've got the headquarters of SSE, so there's already a pool of engineering skills available that we can approach for work on the project. And one of the reasons we make sure we join up with the Perthshire Chamber of Commerce is so we can connect with those people and start having conversations with them.
Councillor Ingworth.
Thank you. How many jobs will, after it's all built and put in place, how many jobs will it provide over the 40 years? Because at the moment you've got jobs in farming, you've got jobs in processing food, you've got jobs in moving the food about. How many jobs will it be created over the long term?
Yes, when a solar farm's operational, they're essentially remotely operated facilities. You have the engineers that visit them and the ones who do the monitoring work, for example. So our head of asset management and our head of operations based in Scotland, we have a project in Fife that's currently about to go into construction, and another project in Angus. So the engineers will be recruiting to look after all of our sites as a group will be are going to have to be based around Perth because that's central to all of those operations. So it won't be a huge number of employment because of the nature of the facility, because they do run themselves essentially, and we're just sending people out on site to monitor it. You'll have some security organisations monitoring the CCTV, and there'll be the office operations and the engineers who do the checks and surveys.
Convener Massey.
Thank you, and thank you for your deputation. In Mr. Ritchie's deputation, he stated that there are other sites that could have supported this development. Have you looked at any other sites, and what made you pick this site?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that aspect of the deputation. There's a number of reasons in terms of site selection. There's always constraints analysis undertaken of a local area. So we're looking at areas that have very sensitive ecologies, which we try to avoid. The areas of very sensitive landscapes that we try to avoid, such as the Sidlaw Hills. And once we've done that constraints analysis, we're left with fields that are more suitable. Now that doesn't mean that there are issues that we have to resolve, which is why we've had to work so hard on the landscaping and making sure that it's going to have a limited or minimal impact on amenities. So this site is the type of site which has the lowest level of impacts in our view, which is why we've chosen it.
Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Russell's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask the committee if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Convener. The question I had was related to the agricultural land statement, which I've now lost, but basically a paraphrasing that is basically grade 2, grade 3A, grade 3B. Am I teasing out from that if it had been like mostly grade 1, it probably would have been refused? Is it dependent on this, on the state of the agricultural land and how prime it is, to summarise?
Yes, so you're correct, Councillor Harvey, that almost all of the site is prime agricultural land. Now, from our point of view, like Mr. Elliott said a moment ago, MPF4 does allow for renewable technologies on prime agricultural land. So we look at making sure that it's of an appropriate scale and doesn't take more than it needs to. So at the last committee, for example, when we had the Calais solar farm, we recommended refusal there because we thought that there was too many panels for the output that they were seeking. So there was more land intake. So here we are satisfied with the panels proposed are taking the amount of a proportionate amount of prime agricultural land. So it's kind of irrelevant whether it was grade 1 prime agricultural land, or we are just looking at is the land take proportionate here, and here we're satisfied that it is of a scale that's proportionate. So I would caveat that the loss of prime agricultural land is regrettable. We certainly don't want to see the loss of prime agricultural land. However, national planning policy does allow for renewables on prime land.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Mr. Pennington, could you clarify the situation regarding the flooding issue? Because it does say, you did change it to say it is at risk of fluvial flooding.
Certainly can, Councillor Braun. So yes, the site is at risk of fluvial flooding. However, worst case scenario, so the 1 in 200 year flood, the site will flood to approximately 30 centimetres. So that's the size of a kind of standard ruler. And the panels at their lowest point are 0.9 metres above the ground. So that would still give clearance of 0.6 metres between the highest flood water and the lowest part of the panel. So the site is at risk of flooding, but we're not concerned at that. And just to clarify as well, neither SEPA or the flood team object to the proposal. They were just simply highlighting it as a risk of flooding, but it's not a concern because worst case scenario, there is still that tolerance there. So hopefully that clarifies for you.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thanks, Convener. Sean, my question's on cumulative impact. For some reason, Cooper seems to be under, immense pressure to have something there, whether it's battery, solar, or whatever. Could you, or do we have a map with areas that are already earmarked for this sort of energy, or ones that will be coming in. I can't find anything that shows me where everything is, and it seems to be an awful lot. And is this over provision? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor James. So yes, it's kind of like what I was saying to Councillor Illingworth with the last application, particularly Abernethy and Cooper Angus just now are hot spots for these type of energies. So we are absolutely taking cumulative impact into account in both areas, and of course anywhere else in PKC where there's a lot happening. So cumulative impact is a consideration. Now we do have maps. I can certainly send you them for going forward. But what I would say for this one is the two in closest proximity, the Calais one that was at committee last month, we've refused, and the Market Hill one we've also refused. So the two closest ones are refused. Now they might win on appeal. That would be looking into a crystal ball if I was to predict that. But at this moment in time, the cumulative impact is considered relatively minimal because we have refused those two. But it would be a consideration for the reporter if we approved this one today. That would be cumulative impact for the other two that they're considering at appeal. So hopefully that clarifies. And I can send you the maps after this committee.
Sorry, Councillor James, just to add to that is coming back to policy again, I think it's policy 11, it concentrates on national and international designations in terms of impact. And my understanding from the report is there aren't any in the immediate vicinity.
Just for your information as well, Councillor James, that the maps are available on the council's public website, and we'll send you the link. So it's not something that is not already publicly available, just in case you felt that we were sending you something different.
No, that's great. Thanks for that, Christian. I just couldn't find it. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. Given the strength of the local opposition, the deputations appear to be very reasonable. What considerations have we taken, or does National Planning Framework actually allow for renewables at any cost? Thank you.
So first of all, Councillor Allen, I'd agree that all the deputations have been fair and reasonable. I would totally agree with that point. But our job as planning officers is to weigh up absolutely everything. So we take into account public opinion, all the planning policies, the targets set by the Scottish Government, and on balance, we feel that it's appropriate. So I would agree with you that everything's been fair and proportionate, but I wouldn't agree with it at being at any cost. We have to balance everything up, and on this occasion, we consider once we've balanced everything up that it's acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you. Given that another solar farm application in Perth Kinross is with Scottish ministers, shouldn't we really be waiting till we hear the result of that application first?
We have done that, and we have chased the Scottish Government a number of times over well over a year now, and we've not had a response back from Scottish Government as yet. So we feel it's unreasonable for us to delay further, make our own decisions and hold these in abeyance until the government decides to make an application on that singular application. But we're looking at each and every application on its individual merits and feel that we can take our position. The concern perhaps that some people would have in terms of ourselves is if the Scottish Government has a different view in terms of approaches that we have taken. Now, in relation to that application, we feel that the loss of prime agricultural land and a number of other factors were taken into account in terms of how we would look at it. We would love to have a position from the Scottish Government, and I most recently spoke to the Chief Planner just 2 weeks ago on it, and we hope that we will have a decision on that application soon. But as I say, it's been with the Scottish Government for over a year now. What the delay is, I'm not too sure.
Just to kind of add to that, of course, you'll be familiar that if you delay, then there's a possibility that the applicant could go for a non-determination appeal and it would take it out with your hands entirely. It's just a technical possibility.
Thank you. Any further questions? Further questions? Can I ask for a motion? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, convener. I'm moving to refuse this application. My concerns here go back to the basic core, which is the loss of prime agricultural land. Now, I appreciate Mr. Elliott and I think Mr. Panton said the same, that there are exceptions because of renewable energy, which I appreciate. But this part of the world, Cooper Angus, as we mentioned, they've lost already prime agricultural land to battery storage at Pleasance Road. Last month, we, as consultees, agreed to a battery storage at Kettins, which on prime agricultural land. I believe that we obviously talk about Market Hill, but as you said, this is still in abeyance and we can't use that as a justification, but it could happen, but we can't accept that. And there's also, I think, a development at Keswick, which was also approved, which is a solar farm. The exception to the prime agricultural rule is for renewable energy, essential renewable energy. And I would argue that Cooper Angus has done its bit for renewable energy already. I don't believe this is now classed as essential in this area. So I feel that the need for prime agricultural land, which is policy 50, outweighs the need for renewable energy in this area. There's also, I think, in the paperwork, quotes NPF 45B. I believe I'm right, section 4, I haven't got my paperwork with me, mentions essential renewable energy. I would class this as no longer essential in this area. Cooper Angus has done its bit for renewable energy. I think now we have to say that prime agricultural land outweighs the need for that. This field, as we've seen in the photographs, produces food on a regular basis. There's no question it's not producing. I accept there's two different levels of quality there, but it still produces food, and we cannot continue to lose this, and particularly in this area, prime agricultural land, and we're losing the ability to produce food. I accept the fact that the site would give an increase in biodiversity. That's fair enough, and there's a need for that, of course, as well. But food is important, and we know from world events that our own security is necessary. So my argument here, Mr. Elliott, is it's contravenes policy 50 because there is not anything to outweigh that need as far as I'm concerned, because there's already essential development there in place. And you're shaking your head, but I'm saying that's my view at the moment. I don't know if anybody wants to second me first or before you.
Thank you. And Councillor James, you wish to second?
Yes, I do, convener. Thanks very much. We're here again, and I agree with everything that Bob's just said. But further to that, I would I've actually written down here because I was looking while we're online. Policy 39, landscape, because of the visual impact. This is 59 acres, and Cooper's, it's out of character. With Cooper, and that therefore that also includes policy 1A and B, because I think it is out of character with the area. So landscape and out of character, 1A, 1B. Thank you.
Okay, can I ask for an amendment? Councillor Harvey, you wish to make an amendment?
Yeah, thank you, convener. Yeah, and I'll be brief. Yeah, my amendment is to accept the recommendation of the officers. While I agree somewhat with Councillor James and the others' comments, this is relatively poor. No, it's good agricultural land, but it's in relatively poor state. It doesn't appear to have been used for anything other than silage for the last few years. I am quite happy about its loss. Sorry, the gain of solar panels outweighs its loss of the prime agricultural land. And I think it's something we need to encourage within the community and within Perth and Kinross. I think the company responsible has taken adequate measures to landscape it, and the biodiversity gain is quite obvious to me. So I'm moving an amendment to accept the officers' recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Bailey Williamson.
Yes, thank you, convener. Yes, I'm happy to second the application. Whilst I understand the mover and the seconder of the motions concerns about the density of solar panels. I think that's maybe something for national government rather than local government. With regard to the amenity, I was going to ask for a comment to be added to the landscaping plan to include the use of semi-mature trees to accelerate the screening process from the site for locals. So I would be happy to second on that basis.
Sorry, did I pick you up correct? You wish to second the amendment, but you wish to introduce another condition?
No, it was just a comment to be added once or if the paper had been approved.
It wouldn't be a comment, it would have to be a change of condition.
Okay, so do you want me to go through that again then? Yeah.
You don't have to go through it again, but Councillor Harvey, you have to agree to it.
Yeah, I'd seen it before, actually. I agree to it. I'm happy to incorporate in my amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, so that would mean changing condition 7, that is the detailed and landscaping scheme which is approved, to prior to commencement of development, a revised landscaping scheme. So that would be an amendment to condition 7, just to clarify.
Thank you for that, Mr. Patton. Can I ask members if they have any comments on the report? Okay, sorry, Mr. Elliott wishes to come in here.
Thank you, convener. Can I, at the moment, there's a motion to refuse and an amendment to approve in line with report with one amended condition. Come back to the motion, Councillor Braun and James, is it? Yes, sorry, it's already been a long morning. I come back to saying that whilst I appreciate where you're coming from, you have to address the policy or policies, particularly NPF4 policies, because they are different from LDP policies. So they go beyond, and therefore, in general terms, where there's a conflict or where there's a difference, you look at the NPF4. And effectively, you've kind of superseded a lot of your LDP policies, and that's particularly to your soils policy. So what I'm asking is, can you identify where it is contrary to policy, particularly NPF4? Because when you were discussing it, you recognised that the policy does allow for renewable energy on prime agricultural land. And you mentioned the soil policy of LDP, but that is a different policy. You have to look at the NPF4 policy on soils in particular.
The prime thought here is policy 50 LDP, because this is prime agricultural land. We can't keep losing prime agricultural land, and my argument was that this is not essential to Cooper Angus now, because there has already been sacrifice on prime agricultural land across Cooper Angus. This is the prime agricultural land. In that context, I don't believe that the need for this outweighs the need for prime agricultural land. That's what it comes down to, I think.
I understand the purpose and what you're saying, but the LDP policy on soils is effectively largely almost entirely superseded by NPF4. So it's NPF4 you have to look at, not the LDP policy.
But I'm looking at policy 50 of LDP, not policy 51.
Right, so policy 50 is
prime agricultural land.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
But the soils, it's described differently in NPF4 as soils, but the policy in NPF4 covering it is 5.
Okay, I think we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Yep. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. I'll now hand over to, well, actually, no, I'll ask members if they've got any comments. I did ask earlier on, but do members have any comments on the report? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, convener. Yes, I fully appreciate the need for different forms of energy, battery storage, etc. But the loss of highly productive food producing land to this quantity of 58 acres, which produces at least 1,000 tonnes of potatoes a year, and the jobs that sit behind that and the economic impact of our rural economy, which is really important to us in Perthshire, I feel is something that should not be overlooked here. We are looking for food security, business security, particularly as well for us here in Perthshire. And we have many producers who are producing high quality food for the supermarket shelves, and we must not lose sight of that. Thank you.
Thank you. No further comments? Oh, sorry, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. It really is just a quick comment, and it's based on my question to the officers earlier on. I just feel that NPF kind of stymies us when we're coming to try and make decisions on these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? No further comment. And can I ask for the proposal of the amendment? No. Yes, the proposal of the amendment, sorry, to sum up. Do you wish to sum up? Councillor Harvey, you wish to sum up?
Didn't realise it was my turn. Sorry. Thanks, convener. Yeah, I'd like to sum up. Sorry, I'd just like to correct one of my earlier statements as well. I said it's being used for silage. It's obviously not. There was potatoes and what looked like turnips getting grown. So I would just like to sum up again. I think we have to encourage solar energy. I think the loss of the prime agricultural land here is important, but I think it's outweighed by the benefit of the solar energy we're getting. We are constrained by where the substations are for such developments, and I think we need to take due cognizance of that going forward with other developments, but I think this development is reasonable. So I would like to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braun, do you wish to sum up?
Thanks, Mayor. Not really. Just to reiterate the concerns that prime agricultural land is an important factor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then we have a motion and an amendment, so I'll now pass over to Mr. Elliott to confirm the terms of the motion and the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Just to explain, when we were in Retaro, what I was doing was explaining the legal context and explaining the policies, resulting of which there is now, I can now narrate the full terms of the motion to refuse. And it's developed since what was discussed publicly. Now, it's first of all refuse. As the proposal is contrary to National Planning Framework 4, Policy 5 Soils, and Perth and Carross Local Development Plan 2, Policy 50 Prime Agricultural Land, as the loss and minimisation of this prime agricultural land and impact on these soils has not been suitably demonstrated. Secondly, the proposal is contrary to Perth and Carross Local Development Plan 2, Policy 1A and 1B, placemaking, as the proposal does not contribute positively to the surrounding open countryside environment and does not respect the character of the area. Sorry, I'm reading my handwriting. So just to be clear, the first ground is not demonstrating suitably the loss and minimisation of prime agricultural land, and the second round is placemaking and not respecting the open countryside environment. Obviously, you've heard myself in terms of the strength of policy for renewable energy. So I think, just to be clear, motion by Councillor Braun, seconded by Councillor James, is to refuse. The amendment by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Bailey Williamson, is to approve with that one amended condition.
Okay, thank you. Now hand over to the clerk.
Thank you, members. In terms of Standing Order 21.5, we will now take a roll call vote. If you can advise when your name is called whether you're voting for the motion to refuse or for the amendment to approve. Councillor Allen.
Motion, I think.
Councillor Braun.
Motion.
Councillor Cuthbert,
Motion.
Councillor Harvey,
Amendment.
Councillor Illingworth,
Motion.
Councillor James,
Motion.
Councillor McPherson,
Amendment.
Councillor Massey,
Amendment.
Bailey McLaren,
Motion.
Councillor Stewart,
Amendment.
Bailey Williamson,
Amendment.
We have 6 votes for the motion to refuse and 5 votes for the amendment to approve. Therefore, the motion will carry.
Thank you. That means that planning permission is therefore refused. Thank you. Okay, now we move on to local applications, and the first local application is for the erection of 35 dwelling house change of house type and associated works allocated site H14 at land 150 metres southwest of Kintillo Cemetery, Bridge of Erne. And to introduce the report is Mr. Panton.
Thank you, convener. So the first local application on the agenda today is for the erection of 35 dwelling houses for Scotia Homes in Bridge of Erne, Perth. The application constitutes a change of house type from a previously consented scheme. I'll now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. So here we can see the location of the site, which is to the east of the Meadows and to the west of the Wixabegley Road. The M90 is further west with the Oudenarde development site beyond. Next slide, please. Here we have an extract from the adopted Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan 2. As can be seen, the site is allocated for housing under designation H14. I would also remind members that the site already benefits from a detailed planning permission, and this application is a change of house type only. Scotia Homes have indicated that the changes are required due to changing market conditions and rising construction costs. Next slide, please. This slide now shows the existing scheme that has already been approved. The yellow circle is the approximate location of where this change of house type application is proposed, which largely covers the affordable housing units. Next slide, please. We now have the proposed site plan for this current application. As can be seen, the road layout is broadly similar, however the house types and orientations have been altered. The application under question covers 27 affordable units and 8 mainstream units. Members should note that there is no increase in the overall number of units from the original permission, and the affordable housing provision remains the same. Next slide, please. This plan shows some of the proposed sections of the site and shows a different range of house types proposed, which includes a combination of bungalows and 2-storey units. Next slide, please. We now have a typical elevation for one of the house types proposed. Conditional control will ensure that the finishing materials are consistent to the remainder of the development. I will now take members through a series of recent photographs from my site visit last week. Next slide, please. Thank you. This first photograph shows the site when viewed from the Meadows, looking in a southwesterly direction towards the M90. You can see here the slight variation in ground levels between the development site and the road at the Meadows. Next slide, please. This photograph now looks back down the Meadows towards Kintillo. The development site is on the right of this image. Next slide, please. We now see the development site again, with Kintillo Cemetery located in the distance. Next slide, please. This penultimate photograph shows part of the Meadows where the existing houses are set back from the main road, thus creating a greater distance between the existing residential receptors and the development site. Next slide, please. This final photograph shows the existing footpath to the rear of Patak Way, for which the wider Scotia Homes development will connect into. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Panton. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, convener. Just to clarify, so they've already got the development's already been accepted. This is just a change in house types due to market conditions, just to clarify.
That's correct, Councillor Harvey. So they do have a scheme in place for 110 houses, and they could go and start that next month, for example. So this is just a change of house type to part of the site.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you. I'm concerned that there's a Burton type house, which is a sort of two-story house right next to Ford Drawn View. Now that the concern is because Ford Drawn View has got a very large solar panel on it, and the Burton may reduce the sunlight for that panel. Is that a material consideration?
Yes, Councillor Illingworth, that is a material consideration, overshadowing on existing properties. However, here we're satisfied that the overshadowing on that property will be minimal. I would also point out that we currently have a planning application in for that property to remove those panels and put a dormer there. So it does look like it's that property's intention to actually remove those panels in any event.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Just a quick question, Mr. Panton. You talk about
Planning application in for that property to remove those panels and put a dormer there.
you. I was just going to ask you. You mentioned standard construction and contemporary, or contemporary houses, standard houses. What was the difference? Is it a change of construction the way they're made, or is it standard style or facial? What? It didn't explain that. Just quick query.
Yeah, that's fine, Councillor Braun. So when the application was originally submitted, it was the house styles that Scotia Homes had proposed were quite unique. And we had granted this whole development as a minor departure from the development plan. So originally they had exceeded the site allocation, but we found it to be appropriate because the house styles were so unique, if you like. But because of the changing market conditions, it's now no longer viable for Scotia Homes to build houses like that. So they're doing more standard house types, let's say. But this area of the site is fully within the settlement boundary, so it wouldn't be a minor departure in this instance.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Bailey Williamson.
Yeah, my motion is to approve.
Thank you. Councillor James, do you wish to second?
Yes, exactly the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's any amendment? No amendment. Ask if committee have any comments on the report. No comments. Okay. No amendment. Therefore, planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. We'll now take a 10-minute recess. Okay. Thank you. Okay, folks, we'll move swiftly on. This is for an application for erection of a food store, Class 1A, and associated works at former Perth and Kinross Council Depot at Fuse at Octor Arda. And to introduce the report is Mr. Smith.
Thank you, convener. This application is another which has come before the committee and focuses on the topic of retail, where the town centre first principle and the lack of identified capacity to accommodate additional offerings are the focus of national and the council's own planning policy. These issues particularly important when proposals are located well away from existing identified retail centres, where there are multiple complementary offerings which contribute to the success of those parts of communities and offer the most sustainable approach, both in terms of economic success and access by sustainable modes of transport. Given the number of proposals and exploration of the issues associated, members will be very familiar with the subject. This proposal in itself is located close to the eastern edge of Auchterarder and was most recently used for ad hoc purposes, including the storage of haulage vehicles. The surroundings are largely residential, although there are some commercial premises directly to the west and a hand car wash further down the street. This application is before you today following the request by the local ward members to have it presented to this committee. The proposal is for a retail unit, which, although indicated to be associated to Sainsbury's and their local format, could be occupied by any operator and used for any purpose falling within Class 1A. It is appreciated that Sainsbury's offer, like all supermarkets, provides a wide range of products on offer, not just groceries. Initially, on submission of the application, the size of the building was some 446 metres square. This scale well beyond the maximum size considered to be appropriate in a peripheral area or reflective of the needs of the immediate residential area. In general, the acceptable scale is referred to as small scale or neighbourhood. The focus for more significant shopping needs is generally towards the aforementioned town and existing identified centres. However, through the course of the application, the size of the building has been reduced to 360 metres square, or around a 20% reduction. However, this still significantly exceeds the relevant size limits, which I'll touch on in a second. The report goes into considerable detail on the issues, with particular focus on criterion C of MPF4 Policy 28, which relates to retail. That particular part of MPF4 limiting unplanned out of centres or out of town proposals to only the small or neighbourhood scale. Paragraph 37 of the Perth and Kinross retail study produced in 2023 sets the scene that such small scale neighbourhood retail should see individual units of no more than 200 square metres. So the proposal is nearly twice the size, or 80% more than what is seen as being the absolute maximum in this situation. In summary, while it's recognised that there is a feeling that additional choice counts in favour of the proposals, this is not a relevant or overriding consideration. Indeed, there is clear evidence that the capacity to accommodate the shift in spend to this location would have an adverse impact on the success of existing offerings, particularly in the town centre, such that the benefit from joint trips and enhanced spending totals would be diluted and likely impact the vitality and viability of those existing offerings, thus the continued success of these community hubs. As such, it is considered that the proposal for a significant retail offering on this edge of settlement site is not appropriate and would have adverse impacts. It is appreciated that the reuse of a largely underutilised site would be beneficial, but the considered view of officers is that the proposal cannot be justified against the relevant planning considerations and would have overall negative impacts. I'll now take you through a brief presentation to set the scene. Firstly, we have an aerial image showing the location of the site outlined in red and where it sits towards the eastern edge of Auchterarder, close to its junction with Benton Road. The distance to the designated town centre is approximately 760 metres up the hill of the Fuse, so far as to be off the western edge of this image. Slide 2. This shows the location in more detail. Immediately to the north is Prestoney Burn Road, part of the Stuart Milne development, whilst Darnley Hill is across the Fuse. To the west is a small number of commercial and business units. Next slide. We now see the proposed layout, including the positioning of the building, car parking and service areas, landscaping areas, largely comprising grassed embankments, which reflect the topographical challenges as the site rises to the north and east. Next slide. Next are the proposed front and western elevations of the single-storey flat roof building. As can be seen, it would sit considerably lower than the surrounding development to the north or rear and east, and its form is standard and typical of the Sainsbury's local offering. I'll now take you to a selection of recent site photographs. This first image shows the view of the site from the southeast across the fuse looking northwards. It shows the current condition of the area and the rise in topography beyond. Next, this is the view from the opposite corner looking northeast. The tree on the left is out with the application site and is intended to be retained and would be situated immediately west of the building. These next three photos are from within the site, with the bottom left-hand image looking west, the top middle image looking north, and the bottom right looking east. Next, we now see a panoramic view southwards from the rear boundary towards the fuse, with the residential properties at Darnley Hill beyond. And the last images, these show the view from the footway in front of the site on the fuse and looking east on the left and west on the right towards the centre of Auchterarder. Convener, that concludes the presentation and we return to the proposed site layout. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputation procedure.
Thank you, Convener. Our first deputation is from Mr. Campbell on behalf of the cooperative group who's objecting to the application, and Mr. Campbell should be on the telephone. Mr. Campbell, can you hear us? You might have to *6 to unmute your phone. Mr. Campbell, if you can hear us, if you *6 your phone to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Good morning, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell, hello. Mr. Campbell, we heard you very briefly, so there is some form of connection. Okay, Mr. Campbell, we're going to move on to the next deputations and we'll come back to yourself. Can I call on local members, councillors, Carr and Watt? Gentlemen, I'm sure you're aware of the deputation procedures. You've got 10 minutes between you. Would you like a prompt if you're getting near the end of the time? Okay. And you're on time, gentlemen.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Watt and myself, and on behalf of the many residents that have contacted us, are here today to give our support for the planning application submitted for a Sainsbury local at the Fuse in Auchterarder. A supermarket in Auchterarder is something that the residents have requested for a very long time, something that I even took to a high level at Aldi and Lidl to see if it was something that they would be interested in looking in. But today we're looking at the application for the Sainsbury's local store. Here are just some of the things that residents are saying with regards to this application. Ian White says, Auchterarder has expanded vastly in my 70 years, and yet the food shopping choices have decreased. The limited parking at the Co-op will always affect the shopping experience there, and people are crying out for a very good local alternative. Victoria Haston says the Co-op has been welcomed and has been successful even before the recent housing development happened, but is now busy to the point of danger. The traffic in and out creates many problems, with people being knocked over, cars scraped and tempers frayed. It makes complete sense to alleviate this pressure with another shop at the lower end of the village to support the increased population there. Andy McGill says a new store would not threaten the independent shops in Auchterarder, as they all offer different options. If anything, it would offer some much needed competition and a wider choice for local families. In speaking with residents, I haven't received a single email, phone call or discussion on the street that has expressed opposition to this planning application. This is in an area of Auchterarder that has had a substantial number of new houses built over the last few years. And with many of them now occupied by families, there is certainly a need to increase the daily food shopping facilities within this particular area. And with permission for a further 100 houses already granted, it can be argued that this is no longer becoming a need, but becoming a necessity for the area. And there's no doubt that this would alleviate some of the issues in Auchterarder around parking in the high street and the traffic movement up the Fuse as well. Under the Local Development Plan 2 planning permissions granted for this large housing development, it was felt that a substantial amount of the land earmarked for this development should be set aside as employment land. If there was a need for employment land at that stage, then surely this bolsters the case for further retail offerings in this poorly served area of Auchterarder. Why wait until this long-awaited wish from local residents changes from a need to a necessity before permission is granted? Let's act now and get ahead of the game and pass this planning request.
Thank you, Convener. Well, as you all know, I was elected in September to represent the residents of Ward 7, and I'm here today to do that in support of the application for a food store in the Fuse, Auchterarder. This was the old council roads yard, and at the sale of the land, there was a letter supporting the development on this site from PKC. And in the 2013 an Auchterarder retail study was identified this site as one of 2 sites within the town for a supermarket. Within the town and surrounding area, there's overwhelming support for this development. It's difficult to walk down the street without somebody wanting to discuss the proposed store, mainly by asking when's it open. This is also backed by the Auchterarder and the Brotherton Community Action Plan. This was a substantive survey that gauged community opinion on a number of priorities and wishes for the area. Theme 6 was increased choice of shopping, entertainment and entertainment opportunities. Many people in the survey also commented that an additional supermarket would provide more choice and affordability. This development will also hopefully lead to greater use of the town bus, which passes the site regularly. The resident of 70 years, Ian, said, "Why is Auchterarder missing out? How on earth did we end up with a development plan that apparently does not support investment in local retailing?" I had 51 comments on social media. Many of them were all supportive. Another examples are another supermarket is long overdue. Quote from a former supermarket owner: "Build it as large as will fit on the plot. Town is crying out for a second major supermarket." Historically, another comment, historically Auchterarder had many more food stores than it has now. A bit of variety and competition can't be a bad thing. It needs to happen to provide choice. On behalf of my dad, 100% yes, who's obviously not on social media. Get it built, yes, but not a downsized version. So that was some of the comments that I received. There's also a mention of increased traffic flow for this development, and I'm wondering what's changed since the traffic survey for the China Foot slip road was announced, where it would have little effect on the high street. Historically, Auchterarder has had many more stores than it has now, which is with a much increased population. I hope the committee support this application and give Auchterarder something that it really wants and needs. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen. Are you willing to take questions from members? Members, if you could populate the chat function. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Thank you for the deputations. Yes, Auchterarder is an area I do know well. Mr. Smith, in his opening remarks, mentioned about a negative economic impact on the existing businesses in the high street. Is this something that you, as councillors, have got sight over? Have you had concerns from the other local business owners? Clearly the co-op's waiting, but are there any other businesses?
One of the great things about Auchterarder is the diversity of the shops that are there. It's one of the few small towns that actually has a thriving high street, and this is down to the diversity of these shops. I don't see anything with regards to the planning application that would affect that. There's nothing that Sainsbury's could offer that the other shops don't already provide. So I don't think that would be an issue.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks for asking me, and thank you for your deputation both. Welcome to the world of planning. You've touched on a part of the question, but obviously there's from your point of view, and what people have said is that there's a limited choice for supermarkets. I mean, what do people do at the moment? Do they have to travel further afield, or because they can't get that sort of element of competition, or what do people do? Just stick with the co-op, or how does it work?
There's a large number of people travel to Perth, to the supermarkets in Perth to shop by bus or by car. There's also, recently there was a problem in the town, and the number of vans coming from Sainsbury's in Stirling, from all sorts of stores, Waitrose in Stirling, and many Perth shops, as to delivering messages, and that'll still continue, you know. And it's a question of capacity, and at the moment, you know, it's very difficult for the co-op to cope with what's the current store to cope with what's the demand that they have on them.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thanks, guys, for your presentation. I don't doubt there's quite a lot of support within Auchterarder, similar to the ones we discussed the last couple of months. I just wonder if you could address, though, the reasons for the refusal, which was to do with the NPF4 and the restrictions on the size of the shops, or the shop size. Do you think NPF4 is incorrect or incorrectly written, or could you just generally address the reasons for the refusal, the actual reasons for refusal?
I don't think that's a question that the councillors can actually answer.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. Take it back then.
If you want to reframe that question, we'll come back. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you for representing Auchterarder today. Well done to the both of you. It's a question really to Alan, because you mentioned it specifically, Alan, but to you both if it's appropriate. You mentioned the size of the unit and that you weren't happy that it's now smaller than it possibly was. Can you just go back on that for me, please?
Many of the comments, it was comments placed on my social media that the population want the original size plan that went forward. Obviously, the Sainsbury's have addressed that, the planner's request to make it smaller, but the feel is that they want it as big as it possibly can be.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, apologies. Can you just, I'll just briefly, can you just comment on the reasons for refusal and why you disagree with those reasons?
As previously mentioned, we can't comment on the framework thing, but what we can say is that the groundswell within Auchterarder is that they have been asking for many years for another supermarket option within the town. As Councillor Watt has said, they would actually prefer it to be bigger than the one that's been proposed today, but certainly with regards to that proposal, certainly sometimes there are rules and regulations that seem to be put in place, but you know, we're up here and we're representing the people of Auchterarder, and that's what they want. You know, the frameworks are usually put in place to protect towns and residents, but in this situation here, I think the town and the residents are absolutely 100% in favour of the planning application, regardless of the framework that's in place.
Aileen McLaren.
Thank you. Councillor Watt, you mentioned about the community action plan. Just a very quick question, how recent was that action plan agreed?
It was brought into place in 2022 and it expires in 2027. But many of the objectives have been achieved in cooperation with the council regarding some of the things going on. But this one's been it's been really a thorn in our side for a long time, if you like, not being able to get, because we did lose a supermarket and we've never got it back when pennies were bought over by the co-op.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Convener. I just want to come back to this question of competition, if I may. Obviously, the concept of MPF4 is to protect that core in the city centre, and I know you said that local business won't be affected, but there are many local businesses which will sell things which Sainsbury's will sell: newspapers, sweets, vegetables, meat. I don't know the whole high street, but isn't there a real concern that could be a detrimental effect to those businesses in what is called the town centre? Or are you saying that it is too far away for it to be an effect?
As I mentioned earlier on, Auchterarder is very lucky that we have a thriving high street. Now that's with the co-op there as it is. Now this has been the case for many years, and as I mentioned in my deputation, the number of new houses, new families, and the proposed housing that's still to go up shows that, as one of the residents had said, one of the quotes that I mentioned, is that the co-op is struggling to cope where it is with the amount of people. So there will be a need, as these houses go up, there will be a need for that extra facility, and it's only going to benefit the high street, the extra housing and the extra people that will be doing the shopping there. And that area of Auchterarder has absolutely nothing in the way of retail, and if we're looking at it's uphill from that area up to the high street. If you're elderly or infirm in any way, then it's a real issue, and it's just something that's needed. And as time progresses and more houses are built, as I said, that need's going to become a necessity. So let's address it now.
Gentlemen, appears to be no further questions. You're free to go. I believe we've got Mr. Campbell on the telephone. Mr. Campbell,
can you hear me?
loud and clear. Can I just explain to people that are online that you're talking on behalf of the cooperative group and you're objecting to this application?
Yes, that's correct.
You have 5 minutes for your deputation, so whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Okay, yeah, I'm ready to go. Good morning, councillors. Sorry about the earlier glitch. My name is David Campbell. I'm a planning consultant, director for a company called North Planning and Development. We represent the cooperative group and their interests across Scotland from a planning perspective. As councillors will be aware, the co-op is a key stakeholder in Auchterarder Town Centre and indeed in numerous other locations across Perth and Kinross. Co-op's got a long established presence at the 124 High Street store in Auchterarder, and the Co-op has objected to this application on the basis that the proposal is contrary to planning policy and will have an adverse impact on town centre traders, including the Co-op. Therefore, we would endorse the planning officer's recommendation, which is to refuse planning permission due to the site being out with the defined town centre and not designated for retail development, and as the planning officer has judged that the proposal would divert footfall and expenditure from the town centre and have a detrimental impact on the vitality and viability of town centre traders. Indeed, if it's for a larger store than is now proposed, the impact would be even more significant. The Co-op is committed to Auchterarder and other town centres across Perth and Cross Council area, and the store in Auchterarder provides a focus for food shopping in the town, complemented by a range of other traders, including local independents, all of who rely on certainty from planning decisions to make investment decisions. The application in front of the committee is for a retail offer that is already provided by the Co-op and others, and if allowed, it would therefore draw customers and expenditure away from the town centre businesses, with consequent adverse impacts on town centre trade and viability. Co-op provides a retail focus in Auchterarder town centre, and many of the shops and other facilities will currently benefit from proximity to the Co-op with its associated car park. Significant impact on the Co-op, as the planning officer judges would occur, will therefore have negative impacts on the wider town centre due to lost shopping trips and reduction in linked spending to other shops, coffee shops, etc. Our analysis, which was submitted to support the Co-op's objection to the application, predicts that the introduction of the proposed food store would draw approximately 75% of its trade from the existing town centre, and that would have a 30% negative impact on town centre retailers. An impact of this magnitude would have significant consequences for Auchterarder town centre traders, a view that's shared by the planning officers and which is backed up by the findings of the Council's own retail study. National and council planning policies are designed to protect town centres, and the Co-op and others have chosen to invest in the Auchterarder town centre based on the certainty that these policies are designed to provide, and this should not be undermined by granting planning permission for out-of-centre developments. To conclude, the Co-op fully support the recommendation of the Council's planning team to refuse planning permission, as the proposal will have a detrimental impact on town centre traders, which is at odds with the policies, aims and objectives of the Council's own local development plan and NPF4, and I hope that the committee can therefore follow the officer recommendation and refuse planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Are you willing to take questions from members?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, we'll give a moment for the chat function to populate. Bear with us.
Okay.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, for your presentation. I didn't quite hear one of your comments there. Did you say you've done a study that shows 75% drop in trade? Sorry, was it drop in trade or transfer of trade to this new store if it was approved? Was that what you implied?
So just to explain, it's actually my colleague that had made the initial submission. So he did some analysis, which was then set out in the objection, which estimated that 75% of the trade to the new store would come from the town centre. So existing expenditure going into the town centre will go to support the new store, if that makes sense. And that has a 30% impact on the trade within the town centre. I know that sounds like it doesn't follow, but does that make sense? I hope it does.
Yeah, no, I follow. I know the percentages are different, but I understand that. So with 25% new business, 75% existing, and a fall off of 30% in the town centre is the prediction of
Yes.
your colleague. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
so,
clear. Thanks.
so the other 25% would be money that currently goes out with up to Ardor, basically.
Okay. Thanks. That's clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener, and thank you, Mr. Campbell, for your deputation. Just a quick question. I know Ultra to drive through, and I think the distance between this site and the co-op is a fair distance between them. Isn't that going to negate the problems you're coming up against, because there is a reasonable distance between the two? And the other part of the question is, at the end of the day, from the consumer's point of view, isn't competition a good thing?
Well, I think the position that the co-op are advancing is simply that planning policy directs retail development to town centres, and it protects retail development in town centres from out-centre development, which would draw trade to out-of-centre locations. And I think, put simply, that's the position that the co-op are putting forward, and that they make decisions about where to locate, where to invest and spend money based on certainty around that proposition, if you like. And Perth and Kinross is not unique. Other council areas, particularly across the north of Scotland, Aberdeenshire, Highland, etc., the co-op have a presence in a lot of town centres, and to invest in those locations, they require certainty that those investment decisions are going to be well founded, and there won't be kind of new development proposals appearing on the edge of towns that will then impact that.
Bailey
If that
McLaren.
answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell, just a little bit further on the economic impact on the current trading store. I'm aware that maybe competition arrived just a wee bit further away in Crieff with the opening of the Aldi store. And I note that store is trading well. So were these figures that you've recently just answered to Councillor Harvey, is that a guesstimate, or is it from a little bit more of a deeper dive into your clientele shopping habits?
Well, as I say, I didn't prepare that submission, but it will have been framed based on evidence. So it's an estimate, maybe rather than a guesstimate. And what I'd say with regard to reference to other locations is that every settlement obviously is of a different size. It has different range of retail offer as existing. It's got different patterns of travel for people, whether, in terms of its proximity to larger settlements and so on. So it's an estimate. It's not an exact science, but it's based on historical precedent and understanding of the kind of trade patterns that tend to go with like for like. So like main food retailers tend to compete, and kind of trade goes to one or other of them in a sort of like for like basis.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you, Mr. Campbell, for your deputation today. You mentioned, first and foremost, the co-op enjoys primacy of the centre of town. It's the big site right in the centre. And you also mentioned earlier on that other retail outlets benefit from close proximity. So I'm not quite understanding why you feel that another opportunity 700 metres away is going to affect you overly. Can you just address that for me, please?
Well, I think the difference is that the proposed food store is an equivalent to the co-op. So as I say, the shoppers tend to kind of visit those on a kind of like for like basis. So the most significant impact we estimate will be on the co-op. But as a result of that impact, if customers were to go to the other location, which is more remote from the town centre, which is not in the town centre and certainly not in the heart of it, that by logic would follow that they'll be less likely to then visit the other town centre facilities, whether it's other shops, coffee shops, etc. And that's where the impact spreads beyond the co-op across the wider town centre.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Bailey Williamson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, for your deputation. My question is very much in the same line as Councillor Allen, in the sense of, my understanding is Auchterarder has probably got one of the longest high streets in Scotland. Starting at the top and working way down the bottom, must be almost approximately 2 miles from one end to the end, the other. Where within that 700 meters distance from the centre of town to the proposed store is the boundary, in your view, for the objection or not objecting? How many meters?
I'm not sure I follow the question, sorry. I suppose what I'd maybe say, sorry if I'm understanding the point, I think what I'd say is that the council's local development plan identifies a town centre with which the co-op is within. The site is not within that town centre. I think the committee report talks to the proximity to the edge of the town centre, what I would say, and in defining a town centre in the local development plan, the council's made a deliberate choice to establish policies that focus and protect retail and associated developments and uses within that town centre. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, the high street, I mean, I accept the high street, if you would describe it that way, is longer than that, but the town centre isn't.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Yep.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Vice Convener. My question revolves around Pennies. We had a representation saying that Pennies was bought by the co-op and then closed. My understanding is the population of Strathallan has gone up from 2011 to 22 by almost 19%. So we're seeing a huge increase in demand, if you like, in number of people. And from what we've been told, Pennies has been removed, therefore there's less offering in the town. Are you planning any extension or expansion of the co-op store in Auchterarder?
So I have no knowledge of Pennies, so I can't talk to that, I'm afraid. What I do know, my understanding from the co-op, and you'll appreciate I'm a consultant, not a co-op employee, is that there currently aren't plans. I don't think there's scope to extend the facility at an existing site. But I do understand that there's currently a kind of £1 million plus refit underway or imminently to be underway to improve and enhance, I guess, the customer experience in whatever. I'm not familiar with the detail of that, but my understanding is that there's quite a significant investment underway in terms of upgrading elements of the store, and that might be just the environment, the quality of the environment within the store, it might be the refrigeration systems, the till arrangements, the aisle widths, and so on. But in terms of an actual physical extension, I'm not aware of any proposals for that.
Mr. Campbell, there's no further questions. Thank you for your deputation and answering questions. You're free to go.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Smitty.
Could I now call on Mr. Morris, planning consultant, and Mr. Duncan, sorry, Mr. Kennedy even, who are representing Sainsbury's. Gentlemen, you are aware of the deputation. You've got 10 minutes between you, so whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for having us here to speak to you today about our plans for a new Sainsbury's for Auchterarder. I'm Duncan Kennedy from the Sainsbury's property team, and joining me is Gary Morris from Other King Planning Consultants. Just to zoom out very quickly and give a bit of context about Sainsbury's and our ambitions for Scotland, I think we've long identified Scotland as an area where we want to increase our investment, especially in terms of new space. We've long kind of recognised that as a business, we've been very heavily weighted towards the southeast of the UK. You know, of our sort of 1,400 plus Sainsbury's stores that we've got just over 100 in Scotland. So we've been on something of a drive to basically bring more new stores to Scotland. And our acquisition team has been more sort of specifically focused towards this in recent years. And we're starting to see some of that come through now, even in the last 6 months, where we've had our first ever airport store land in Edinburgh Airport. We've had new stores in Lenzie, our new supermarket just this year in Bishopton, some nice new stores in Glasgow. And just last month, we had a new store open in Brightons and Falkirk. So in total, with that sort of programme between end of last year and beginning of next, we're hoping to create around 450 new jobs in Sainsbury's in Scotland. And that brings us to Auchterarder, which admittedly we wanted to bring a store to for quite a long time. As I say, you've heard already that we were originally proposing a larger scheme with a shop floor of just over 300 square metres. We've now reduced that to a shop floor of about 240 square metres in response to requests from the officers and the feedback, which takes it to approximately, that basically means it's about the average size of a Sainsbury's local store. And the new scheme, the newly proposed scheme that we're suggesting would employ between 15 and 20 colleagues. You've already heard from local ward councillors today that there's significant demand within the local community for a new store. We also did our own survey sort of via social media that we've spoken to quite extensively, but just to remind, that was a 2-week process that we ran in a targeted area in and around Auchterarder between January and February this year. In the 2 weeks, we had over 1,000 responses, with 943 of those, so 91% indicating that they would support it. If anything, as you've already heard as well, the main bit of feedback that we've had where people might want to change the scheme is to have a larger store, but clearly we're just proposing a neighbourhood local store. And we said, we think throughout the application that we think this is the best location we can find for it, and that we plan for the store to serve the immediate area around it, with the aims of fostering 20-minute neighbourhoods. I guess the other thing I just wanted to mention before I pass on to Gary to address some of the more policy specific elements is, I guess, around the opportunities that the store will bring. Clearly at its heart, a grocery store is a grocery store, and the primary thing it's going to do is sell food and offer more shopping choice. But beyond that, I wanted to also touch on this, things like sort of the charity, community, and also development opportunities we think the store will bring. Basically, every single one of Sainsbury's stores, right down to the smallest convenience store, kind of serve, like they aim to serve, be an integral part of the local community they serve essentially. And in a way, every Sainsbury's store is a spoke on the larger sort of Sainsbury's network, which is what we'd be looking to obviously create here. The jobs we create is not just about 15 to 20 jobs at any given time, which obviously is an employment benefit, but it's also about the possibilities for career development. I myself started in a Sainsbury's local in Scotland, in Edinburgh, about coming on 15 years now as a shop floor assistant. Since then, I've had the chance to move around all sorts of different stores, different locations in England, Scotland and in Wales, and then subsequently moved into the head office function in the procurement department and now the property team. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to make the point that wherever it's located, every new Sainsbury's store kind of operates as a bit of a connection to the wider network, and all the other opportunities that brings. So thank you, and I'll now hand over to Gary.
Thank you, Duncan. So I just wanted to touch on some of the more policy related points related to the application. So this is an application which is supported in terms of transportation, flooding, environmental health, officer supports, business support. So we're really down to sort of one area, and that's the retail policy. So MPF 4 policy 28, which says that retail in outer centre locations is acceptable if it's small scale neighbourhood. But interestingly, MPF 4 doesn't put a definition on what small scale neighbourhood is. And I can only assume that that's deliberate, because small scale neighbourhood is probably different depending what settlement that neighbourhood is in. So the definition of small scale neighbourhood that your officers are taking is a recommendation from the retail study. It's not policy, it's a recommendation. And the recommendation is 500 square meters in total for a neighborhood, small scale neighborhood, of which no unit can be more than 200 square meters. So interestingly, that allows 500 square meters. We are 360 square meters. So the logic there is if we put a wall down the middle of our store, we would be under the 200 square meters and we traded from two separate units. It's completely illogical to do that, but it would put us under the 500 square meter limit that recommendation is suggesting. So, and just in terms of size, just to give you a bit of an indication of the scale of this proposal, it's a Sainsbury's local. It's half the size of the Co-op. So it's a small store. So we think we are entirely capable of meeting the criteria of small scale neighbourhood. The intention is that we will serve this end of Octorada. So moving on to your policy 13 of your local plan, which isn't superseded, it is still relevant. There's no conflict with most of policy 13 with MPF 4. And it refers to quantitative or qualitative need. And our view is that there is a clear qualitative need. And we've heard the ward councillors talk very eloquently about that qualitative need that the people of Octorada want. The qualitative need is not so much something which is black and white. I think it's something that is a bit more fluid than that. I don't think we can say that just because there's already one food store in Octorada that is qualitative need met. Because if you've got no choice, you've got no competition. If you've got no competition, you've got no incentive or regulation on price, on quality, service, supply, range innovation. All of those things are things that come from providing a choice for where people can shop. So it's not really a one and done. So obviously we've heard that people are very supportive of proposals. We're very grateful for that. We're not a supermarket. We are a local convenience store, but we will provide more choice and we will introduce 20-minute local living. And that's primarily to people that already live there, but also to the people that don't yet live there in the new housing expansion areas at this end of Octorada. So just to wrap that up, in summary, we're a brownfield site. We'll introduce much wanted and needed food shopping choice and competition. We'll create jobs and opportunities. And even if you think there is a conflict with policy 28 of MPF 4, we think there are very strong material considerations that weigh in favour of granting planning permission for the development. And I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've got questions in already. Councillor Allen.
Thank you both for your presentation today. I'm going to ask a question about something you both mentioned. So you've both mentioned 20-minute neighbourhoods. Can you just expand for me what you think that is?
So that's something that's a central thread to MPF 4. So that's set throughout. So in retail terms, that means a retail facility that is accessible within 20 minutes walking of the site. So some of the new residential properties around this end of town are beyond 20 minutes to the town centre. So and it's uphill as well. Walking into the centre of Octorada from there is not really a realistic prospect if you're going to be walking back with heavy bags. And these are the houses that are currently built. So once the houses are built further out, for example, on the allocation site, they're going to be well beyond 20 minutes. So this is about bringing a store within a 20-minute reach of those residents. Does that answer your question?
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you. Just could you clarify, obviously, a store is one size, but an area will be accepting deliveries and storing stock. So what is the trading area going to be?
So the trading area is 240 square meters. So just by way of comparison, the Co-op store is listed in your retail study at 504 square meters. So we're just under half the size of the Co-op. So it's fairly typical of a Sainsbury's local.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks for asking me. Thank you both for your deputation. Mr. Kennedy mentioned when he was talking about you've done a consultation with social media to see what support was there, but I'm assuming you've done a business assessment of your own to warrant the sort of investment. So I wonder what the outcome of that was for actually building there.
Yes, I mean, Sainsbury's will have done a full viability assessment. So as Duncan said, Sainsbury's have been looking for a site in Octorada for a very long time. It's something that's been identified as a need for a very long time. I mean, back in 2014, your retail study was suggesting that there was a quantitative need for new food supermarket, and that was repeated in the 2016 one as well. So yeah, there is absolutely a business case that supports this.
Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Braun beat me to it, so withdraw my question.
Gentlemen, there's no further questions, so you're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you. Can I ask members, do they have any questions for officers? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, but I'll answer the first one first. One of the respondents mentioned about your own surveys regarding like shopping trends and loss. Can you confirm that the figures that they gave regarding the co-op, particularly the person from the co-op, can you confirm the figures reflecting your viewpoint as well?
I think what I would say in relation to that is there is clear evidence to indicate that the majority of the trade that would be subject to use by Sainsbury's would be that diverted from elsewhere. Retail is a very complex beast, and as we've said, there are cumulative impacts when a number of retailers are grouped together in town centres. That's why there is a town centre first priority, but something like this, which is some distance from that on the edge of town, the evidence clearly shows that there'd be significant diversion, about 30% less spend in Auchterarder town centre as quoted by the deputy, or 75% of all trade that would go to the Sainsbury's store is trade that is already or spend that's already being made within Auchterarder town centre, and the 25% remainder of that is fairly natural to see what's called leakage to go elsewhere, and that might be spend that people would choose to do, for other goods to large centres, whether it be Glasgow, Edinburgh, or go to make a choice at the multitude of other supermarkets in close proximity, such as in Crieff, or go to Perth for other purposes, etc.
So just to follow up that, the general drift of the numbers is something you agree with?
Yes.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. In the last deputation by Mr. Morris and Kennedy, they spoke about the directive on small-scale neighbourhood units and had suggested that they'd move from 446 metres to 360 metres, but there was no definitive reason for either the request or the refusal. Where would we actually accept the size? Thank you.
The council's retail study, which has been approved by council, sets out what it would be considered to reflect a neighbourhood or a small-scale retail that would serve local needs of the immediate population, and that has been set out as a unit of 200 square metres, or a grouping of different offerings of up to 500 square metres, so offerings that would serve local needs for small-scale shopping, your milk, your papers and such like, but anything beyond that should be located in allocated sites or within existing centres, and then would direct people to those locations where, as we've mentioned before, there are cumulative needs, so linked trips, additional spend. It's quite widely accepted in the analysis community of retail spend that more is spent in town centres than is spent when a facility is located in isolation. And I think we've all seen what has happened over decades past with out-of-town shopping, and for the scale that we're looking at, it's similar concerns that we have, that we are just diverting trade away from the town centre. The nature of retail has significantly changed, and the various people have mentioned deliveries, online shopping, etc. So the need for physical space has significantly reduced over recent decades to well below what would have been the requirement in times gone past, because there are so many options for people to make their shop.
Thank you for that answer. It's helpful to hear the answer, but I'm just trying to understand. This is a development of 240 square metres and we're suggesting 200 square metres. How much of a difference do you think that's going to take away from the town centre if it was to be 200 metres?
Well, I'd maybe firstly clarify that the 200 square metres relates to the gross size. So you've quoted 240 square metres, which is the retail floor space size, which is not the figure that we're comparing. So it's a lot more than that, as we've set out. So I'd firstly clarify that. What I would maybe say is that if the unit was a gross size of 200 square metres, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But equally, I would say that a unit of any size within or potentially adjacent or close to the town centre, we may well be able to support. So we would much prefer in policy, for good reason, direct significant scaled retail proposals to establish centres such that there are multiple cumulative benefits both to communities and to businesses themselves. But in answer to your question, if the unit was a gross size of 200 square metres, it would be compliant with policy.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth.
Right, thank you. I'd like to talk about Kinross, which is almost exactly the same size as Auchterarder. It has a large supermarket on the outskirts, but the centre of Kinross itself seems to be booming. Is that a logical comparison?
I think the individual circumstances are quite different. I haven't looked in detail in relation to this proposal and how it compares to what the situation is in Kinross. But as I say, there is a detailed retail study undertaken on behalf of the council and adopted by the council that sets out what the requirement is for physical space and where that should be directed to. And in all cases, that should be to establish centres. I think I touched on earlier that there is perhaps a widely held view that there were issues associated to out-of-town retailing that we are still recovering from in many locations today. And to an extent, the issues that we're looking at are largely the same as those which resulted from out-of-town shopping. This is a proposal sitting in isolation on the edge of a settlement that would draw trade away from, or the evidence indicates that a significant amount of spend and trade would be drawn away from the town centre. And that is not something that the policy seeks to encourage.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. There's more of a question for clarification that Mr. Smith or Mr. Elliott might want to come up on this one, because I may misunderstand a little bit here, but on the concept of MPF4. But on the one hand, it seems to want to protect town centres, which is understandable. But on the other hand, it wants to create 20-minute neighbourhoods, which we seem to have a situation here where we've got. I appreciate square meterage may come into this, but generally, it seems to be fighting itself here, because we're going to create a 20-minute neighbourhood if it goes through, which is fair enough, but it's not in the town centre. But we seem to be adverse sides to this. Maybe I've just misunderstood it, but maybe Mr. Elliott can explain a bit better about it. That's how it looks from a layman's point of view. Sorry.
I know that was a viewpoint that was presented to you by the deputy, but and again, I don't want to go into detail as to where I live. but I know Auchterarder very well, and I'm not of the view that it would take me 10 minutes to walk to the town centre from this location. And equally, what we're looking at is access to the entirety of Auchterarder to facilities within 20 minutes of their home. And again, my opinion is that almost all of Auchterarder, if not its entirety, is within 20 minutes walk from the town centre, whereas there are probably locations in Auchterarder that wouldn't be within 20 minutes walk of this site because it's at one particular end of the settlement. But I don't feel, or my view is that this doesn't conflict with the 20-minute neighbourhood concept.
Councillor Harvey, second question.
Sorry, you just answered that question there, so I didn't even ask it, but thanks.
Any further questions? Further questions? Can I ask for a motion? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. I have a motion, if you'll bear with me. My motion is to approve the application subject to suitable conditions. And I would like to remark that although the proposal is contrary to NPF 4 and recognising policy 28, retail, the proposal is supported by other policies of the development plan. And in particular, I've identified NPF 4 policy 9, which is brownfield site. And I think all having seen the photographs earlier, you can see it's an eyesore. It's a vacant site and it's an empty site. The proposal would result in the sustainable reuse of brownfield land. I'd also like to bring to attention NPF 4 policy 15 and talk about local living and 20-minute neighbourhoods, the discussion we've just had. The proposal would contribute to local living, including the 20-minute neighbourhood of the area. Local people will be able to meet their daily shopping needs by a variety of sustainable modes of travel, including walking and cycling. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James, it's a motion or an amendment or a second?
No, it's a second, convener. I agree with everything that Councillor Allen has just said. I couldn't put it better myself. And I'd be very supportive of both those policies. Thank you.
Okay, can I ask if there's any amendment? Councillor Harvey.
I suppose I have to be consistent, and I suppose it depends who gets support. I accept, similar to the last two ones we did, I think we have to accept the officer's report to turn this recommendation down. I mean, I appreciate the need for a store in Auchterarder, but we continually go against the officer's recommendations with regards to town centres and the removal of shopping from them. Particularly worrisome here is the 30% potential downturn in footfall into the town centre. However, I'll see if I've got a second and we'll go from there. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to second Councillor Harvey? No seconder. Amendment falls.
Yes, sorry members, just to be clear, I appreciate you've only got the motion before you, but there is a little bit of tidying up to do in what was suggested from my technical point of view. If I kind of read out what I think it should be, it's approve the application subject to, and Councillor Allen only suggested conditions, but it needs to be a possible legal agreement, suitable conditions and informatives. And of course, those will be, if this is passed, drafted and passed through yourself and Councillor James, but it's then I would go on to say, although I think more or less what you said, although the proposal is contrary to National Planning Framework 4 Policy 28 Retail, the proposal is supported by other policies of the development plan, namely, firstly, National Planning Framework 4 Policy 9A, I think it is, you only mentioned 9, but it's 9A, brownfield, vacant and empty buildings. The proposal will result in sustainable reuse of brownfield land. And secondly, National Planning Framework 4 Policy 15A, you only mentioned 15, but I do like to mention the specific categories, and it's important in the NPF4 to do that. So that's local living in 20-minute neighbourhoods. The proposal would contribute to local living, including 20-minute neighbourhood of the area. Local people will be able to meet their daily shopping needs by a variety of sustainable modes of travel, including walking and cycling. So what I'm stressing is it's approval subject to legal agreement, conditions and informatives for those reasons.
Thank you. Can I ask committee if they've got any comment on the report? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, convener. This conversation about food retail opportunities, is coming to us frequently here. But I think competition works. Everybody buys food. So therefore there is a continual need. But equally, let's not forget something I've said in an earlier application here. There is a further strong economic impact here, because we have in Perthshire food suppliers who supply milk, potatoes, vegetables, other vegetables to these supermarkets. So it's sustaining employment in our wider rural communities. And I would also acknowledge the fact that the local development plan, which is very much a live one, captured that community need for further choice. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor James, you can't comment. You put forward your seconder to the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Councillor Braun, do you wish to sum up?
No, just a comment. No, so I'm just going to have a comment. That's all. Just to say, competition is good. I understand the concerns that were raised, certainly by Mr. Campbell, the co-op representative. But I live in Blairgowrie. We have 3 main stores running: Tesco's, well advertised, Lidl's, and Home Bargains. We also have a Sainsbury's local in the main high street, and all are surviving well. People will go where they want to go. We have individual shops, butchers, grocers, newsagents. They all seem to be doing very well. So I think the concerns that Mr. Campbell raised, I think perhaps not necessarily all going to be there. People will go to the shops they want to go to, but competition is a good thing, and it encourages good prices and competitive prices for people. So I'm fully supportive of this. Thank you.
Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Auchterarder's economy is strong enough to support 2 stores. There's a shortage of parking in the city centre, and this will make life easier for people.
Thank you. Any further comment? Okay, Councillor Allen, do you wish to sum up? Get the person right this time.
Yes, thank you, convener. As a local councillor, my inbox is full of people who are supportive of a new opportunity to shop and have choice in Auchterarder. But I came along today to listen and to make up my mind based on what was said. And much as people might think that that was a pre-arranged thought, it wasn't. I've sat here and written it whilst we've been at the committee today. I've listened to my 2 ward councillor colleagues. They've made some great comments. They are very supportive also of the local community, and I thoroughly recommend this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. In light of there only being a motion, and the motion is to grant, therefore planning permission is granted. Thank you. Okay, there's one application to go, and then there's a pan. We'll just carry on. I don't see any reason to stop for lunch. So the next application is for a residential development in principle at land 25 metres east of Greenbank, Hawfield Road, Bridge of Erne. To introduce the report is Mr. Smith.
Thank you, convener. This application relates to an infill site on Hochfield Road in Bridge of Erne, with planning permission in principle sought for residential development. 3 letters of objection have been received, one from the Erne Community Council. In general, concerns raised consider that the site would be overdeveloped, the design and scale indicated it does not fit the area, and that there would be impacts on residential and visual amenity. However, these are matters of detail and appear to result from the indicative proposals provided with the application. It is important to point out that these details are not under consideration, only the principle of using the site for residential purposes. As noted in the report, the surrounding uses are residential, and in this context, further residential development would not necessarily cause conflict, subject to design and scale of the development being proposed. As mentioned, indicative plans support the application, setting out a potential proposal. However, although not being considered in detail, those plans are not considered by officers to be appropriate and are unlikely to be supported if submitted. As such, a significantly amended scheme would require to be submitted at the matter specified in conditions or detailed application stage. Officers would happily see a pre-application submission made such that we can give further guidance. In particular, any proposal should reflect the listed building Hochfield House to the north, and also the scale, design and siting of properties to the east and west, including their respective building lines. While this shall require not insignificant revision to what has been indicated, the issues are not insurmountable and a positive scheme considered to be achievable. Hence the recommendation for conditional approval. I'll now take you through a brief presentation to set the scene. First image. This aerial image shows the location within Bridge of Erne, outlined in red on the southern side of Hochfield Road, a short distance east from the junction with Forgan-Denny Road. Next slide. This slide shows both the site location in more detail, both the site and its location in more detail. As mentioned previously, this is an indicative layout. It shows 2 plots with the dwellings sitting behind existing building lines, largely to accommodate large parking and turning areas. Next slide. Here we see the related indicative elevations. It's clear that there are 2 contrasting house designs, both in terms of scale and appearance. This is not considered to fit well either in terms of the relationship between the 2 properties or their neighbours, or in the context of the wider character of the area. It suggested that the scale of both properties should take their cue from the properties to the west, such as Green Bank, as opposed to the much larger scale of Hazelwood. Next slide. This slide shows the indicative floor plans, plot 1 at the top being a 3-bedroomed property and plot 2 being 5-bedroomed. We now move to a selection of site photos taken recently. This first image looks into the site from the existing entrance on Hochfield Road. It shows the relatively mature landscape setting which characterises this part of Bridge of Erne. Next photo. Here are the respective views from that access along this part of Hochfield Road, with on the left views westwards, including an existing overgrown hedge along the site frontage, and then from further along the road looking back towards the site, which is on the right of the right-hand shot. Next slide. These 2 photos are to illustrate the scale and appearance of the nearest dwellings, with impressive Hazelwood on the left and then Greenback on the right. It is considered that the scale of any development should be more reflective of the latter. Convener, that concludes the presentation, and I'll leave you with the site plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We do have the deputation on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputation procedure.
Thank you, Convener. We have Mr. Node on behalf of the applicant via telephone. Mr. Node, are you there? You might have to *6 to unmute yourself. Good afternoon, Mr. Node. If you can hear me, can you star 6 to unmute your phone? Convener, we don't appear to have Mr. Node, so I will hand back to yourself.
Mr. Node, if you can hear us, please press star 6. Okay, we'll try and get back to Mr. Node. So we'll move on to questions for officers. Do we have any questions for officers? Councillor Illingworth, I see you put a question. Was that for a question for that? Right, thank you.
Is the fact that permission has previously been granted for this site in the 1990s a material fact?
Planning history is relevant, but that is very historic and is no longer able to be implemented. But in any case, the feeling or the clear position of officers is that residential use of that site in a residential area in between residential properties is acceptable.
Thank you. Bailey Williamson.
Thank you. I noticed that one of the conditions that's been attached to the application is that the burn at the back of the properties or possible properties is going to be kept and maintained for flood risk. I was wondering if Christian could just expand on that. Is that something that takes place within the community along that stretch of burn?
I'm going to defer to my local resident colleague to maybe give you a bit more information of what the situation is.
Yes, so the barn that runs to the back of the site, the Hall barn, that's actually one where beavers have recently been reintroduced to. So there is a ongoing programme which a lot of local residents are involved with to keep that barn kind of free flowing for the beavers, if you like. So that barn is maintained to a certain level, so it shouldn't be an implication for the applicant to have that condition on their consent.
Thank you. Any further questions? Further questions for officers? Can we try Mr. Node? Can you hear us? Okay. Mr. Node, can you press star 6 on your phone?
Good afternoon, Mr. Node. We briefly heard you there. Star 6 to unmute the phone, please. Mr. Node, can you hear us? We're not hearing you. Mr. Node, we see that you've unmuted. Could you try talking, see if we can pick you up?
Okay. And I'm really sorry, Mr. Node, we cannot hear anything you're saying. We're going to have to move on. Can I ask for a motion? Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, convener. This is really quite simple, I would say. So I'm happy to put forward for approval as per laid out in the papers by our officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder? Councillor Cuthbert.
Yeah, I'll go in first. Yeah, I'm happy to recommend approval on the basis of the recommendations.
Thank you. Do we have any amendment? No amendment. Can I ask the committee, have we got any comments on the report? No comments on the report. Can I ask if Bailey McLaren wishes to sum up?
Convener, thank you. You know, as I said, it's really quite a simple one. It's an infill site, and it would add to the village. It's not going to distract. It's only an outline. So when the detail comes through, the application comes through, that's when, you know, it will gather more scrutiny. But yeah, quite happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Therefore, planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. We now move on to the proposal of application notice, and this is for an installation of a 39 megawatt solar farm comprising ground mounted solar array, battery, energy storage system, vehicle access and associated works at land 890 metres east of the Bayer Balverde Farm, Strathmiglo. Do members have any comments? Councillor Illingworth.
Yeah. Can I ask that consideration be given to the sound impact on Gamekeeper's Cottage and to the visual impact from Gamekeeper's Cottage and from Bearvard Castle, which is different from Bearvard Fair Farm? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Councillor Illingworth has just mentioned the two items I was going to, and perhaps if we are talking to developers, can we encourage them to use sites that don't have such an impact locally, and maybe use roofs of buildings or large buildings? Thank you.
Thank you. I actually have a comment on this as well. Now, I know that we take into consideration that it may be on agricultural land, and the loss of agricultural land is regrettable. But I was wondering if this could be relayed to the developer, that I would like to actually know how much food is not going to be produced on this part of the land. How many tons of potatoes, how many tons of wheat, how many tons of barley in the 40-year span? Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I would just like to back that up as well. But judging by the previous conversation we had, I think we maybe need to think about how we object to these things in future as well and have a baseline for that.
Thank you, convener. I think probably what I would advise that if members of the committee have comments that they would like to present to the proponent of the scheme, then they should do that directly. I think what was being asked here, are there any things that we would not normally look at that perhaps local members might be aware of that officers should be considering? So Councillor Illingworth has mentioned very specifics, although we would be looking at noise and visual impact in any case. But if there are comments for the proponent of the scheme, I would encourage you, because they're going through a public consultation process at the minute, to feed those comments to them. That's not really the purpose of today. We're creating awareness for you, but if you wish to comment to the proponents, please do that directly.
Thank you for that advice, Mr. Smith, and I will do that. I just wanted to get it out there in the public. Thank you. Okay, there's no further business today, so thank you members, thank you members of the public, thank you to the officers, thank you Mr. Elliott, and thank you to the team that provide all the information and screens, and thank you Ms Brown, thank you.